Hey
We're
everyone,
good.
welcome to the Everyone's a Critic podcast with your girl Queenie and your boy Kojo. Today we are talking about the film that everyone's talking about,
Finally
and
here.
that is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I just want to start off by saying I'm happy that it's not called Black Panther 2. And I remember I was talking about this with my really good friend Jasmine. And she said this to me, and she was like, it wasn't a direct continuation of the first Black Panther because we have lost the Black Panther, right? Who was Chadwick Boseman. So I was kind of happy that it was another story as opposed to an extension of the story that we once knew, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I'll start off there. But hey, Kojo,
Hey, Queenie.
how did you find Black Panther? Wakanda?
Yeah. So I thought good. I mean, so we're kicking this off with like a non-spoilery, just quick, tidbits. I thought it was good. I actually thought it was maybe better than I expected. I didn't think it was obviously it wasn't a perfect film. Obviously it wasn't like it's not going to be like top 5 MCU for me, but I was really impressed with how the film tackled some of the themes around grief and loss, colonialism, POC allyship, diaspora allyship, like continuing Killmonger's legacy. We'll get into it. But again, like and off the top, let me just shout out Angela Bassett. Shout out Angela Bassett one time.
Yeah,
we'll get into it. But yeah, it's good. It's top. It's the best film of Phase 4, like we said it would be. Definitely top 2, but maybe the best film of Phase 4.
Best film of Phase 4. I feel like that's a stretch.
But who's at the top of Phase 4? Spider-Man: No Way Home or this?
Spider-Man: No Way Home or
nothing else. Nothing
no,
else.
No.
Nothing else.
Infinity War. Are you crazy? That film
Infinity War was not Phase 4. Infinity was Phase 3.
Phase 3. Oh, sorry. Okay, Phase 4 is what? Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, Black Widow, Shang-Chi, all the TV shows, Thor: Love and Thunder. That's it.
Fine, I'll accept.
Again, the bar was low. The bar was very low.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Fine.
Yeah.
I accept.
Yeah.
I yield.
Come through House of Dragons. But yeah, so just a non-spoiler, Queenie, what's your immediate takeaway as well? What do you think?
I watched it twice. I watched it on the day it came out, Friday the 11th, and then I watched it on the Saturday. The first time I watched it, I didn't love it. I didn't love it. I didn't love it.
Oh.
And then I watched it again, and I was like, okay, I like it more.
Okay.
I really had to sit with it and understand why certain things it didn't quite make it click for me. And I think you kind of mentioned it at the start, in terms of it not being as complex as the first film. And I think that was the letdown for me. I think I was expecting, especially with the kind of things that we saw, I was expecting loads. It didn't quite land for me, unfortunately. But it was good. It was good. And I will probably go to the cinema and watch it for the third time. But that's mostly because I have an Odeon card. And I can do that.
I didn't know Odeon have a card. I have a Cineworld card, obviously, and I'm seeing every film that I can for, without paying for a ticket. I didn't know Odeon have a card, but anyway, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, so that's our non-spoiler breakdown. We're going to move into like an actual breakdown of the actual story, then do some production beats and stats. So if you haven't seen the film, if you're one of the few people who still trying to figure out if you should actually go and watch it, and if you're undecided, I guess our take is to go and see it. Maybe even Queenie's take, go and see it twice just to make sure you really like it.
For real.
But yeah, so breaking down. So spoilers in 3, 2, 1. I mean, this isn't really a spoiler. This is kind of picking from, starting from where the cast, so without the film, the cast have been left off, is dealing with the death of T'Challa, dealing with the death of Chadwick Boseman. So the film starts off that way. Immediately, which I thought was super. I was like, oh wow, we're here. Like we're locked in. This is where we are. Shuri trying to save his life and everything else. And T'Challa dies to some. It's an undescribed or unnamed illness. And I thought, just on this note, I thought this was very interesting because the way they deal with it kind of parallels how, maybe the cast felt in real life. I mean, Shuri mentions just the anger and rage she feels that he kept this sickness to himself and he didn't, allow them to help. And I was like, wow, like immediately emotional. Like at that, because again, this film dealing with the loss of the Black Panther, but really is the cast dealing with the loss of their friend. So navigating grief in that space. How did you feel like when it kicked off?
I was expecting it. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like they had to tackle this head on. I think like probably a big I'm gonna give a lot of grace to this film just because obviously you can only imagine the things that they had planned to do with Chadwick Boseman in the role of Black Panther in this second installment of this franchise. And so to have our Black Panther die and then have to go back to the drawing board and try in terms of the film and try and figure out how to make it work. I felt like this was the only way that they could do it, right? We already knew from maybe this time, maybe 2 years ago, or when did he die? Was it last year? Anyway, we knew when he died that they weren't going to recast his role. So this felt right to me. And so when I was watching it, yes, it was intense and really sad, but absolutely necessary. And I'm glad. It was super sad, but also a lovely send off to not only the character, but to Chadwick Boseman as well.
Yeah, I thought the funeral was beautiful. Oh no, funeral. No Avengers. No Avengers.
Hold on.
I've seen some people pick up with this, and I mean, you can chalk it up to it's either an oversight, maybe we just couldn't get them in for this. But I mean, Marvel, they can get whoever they want to get in for the film. So I don't know about that one. I don't know. Maybe in my headcanon, the way I've rationalized this is just by saying, it's a private funeral. Wakandans didn't want to let anyone in, kind of thing. But then again, they were assisting Bucky, when he was going through his rehabilitation. They've had the Infinity War was staged, was in Wakanda. Maybe that's why they're not letting anyone back in there. So who knows?
No
Avengers. My man Tony Stark had everyone at his funeral, and not one Avenger.
Not one member of S.H.I.E.L.D.
No one. So anyway, think about that. Let's move on.
Giving racism.
but then no Rhodey Rhodes, no. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It just I just thought that was interesting. But again, I think a private moment for.
Oh, but you know what?
Yeah, what's up?
I'm so sorry to cut you off. You know what though? Oh wait, no, because everyone knew that they'd lost. Everyone knew eventually. I guess because the Black Panther was so integral to Wakanda, and everyone knows that, and that's what they said throughout this film. Without the Black Panther, what is Wakanda kind of thing? Wakanda has no savior. That's what was the rhetoric that was going on. So I guess at the start they just didn't want people to know. Maybe that was it.
Maybe just a private funeral could be just a private funeral. They didn't want to. I mean, those are his friends, really and truly.
Yeah.
Anyway,
hey, take it with Ryan. Take it with Ryan.
I want to jump to the introduction of Talokan for a second, because I think a major core of what this film is built on, other than T'Challa's passing, is the introduction of Talokan, introduction of Namor. And this is, so from the comics, I think Namor was actually say Namor, some say Namor. They bounce back and forth even in the movie. They don't know what's going on. But I believe Namor was also introduced in the Black Panther comics as well. But maybe I'm getting that wrong. But basically, Namor has always had a Just say a beef. Just say beef. They've been cats and dogs since the beginning, because obviously Talokan, or in the comics is known as Atlanta, has, is a sea dwelling people. Wakanda has all these resources above, and they've always had like a problem. What happens in the film when sort of Namor and the rest of there's no official name for them as far as I know. Like they're not called the Atlanteans in this. They're just, the Talokan people.
Yeah.
Where they wipe out the CIA affiliated agents who are mining for vibranium in their seas, using a detector created by one Riri Williams. I was geeked to see Riri Williams as a character in this, because Ironheart was a show Marvel slayed like years in advance. I knew it was going to come, so I kind of done a bit of reading like years ago, like, oh, what's Ironheart? And it's like, oh, she's like, almost like a prodigy of Tony Stark. So it's really nice to kind of see her also be introduced into this, and I haven't heard people mention her too much. But yeah, the Talokan people wipe out the CIA affiliated agents. I didn't expect it to get so dark off the rip. They were siren songing them to their deaths. They were just killing people. I was like, oh wow, it still surprised me when I see people die in the MCU, and I don't know why.
No, seriously, and especially when they're part of the CIA. it's like whoa, we're killing agents now.
So I saw a take on this, which is interesting. Going back to a theme I mentioned about colonialism, POC allyship, colonialism and imperialism in particular. So a major criticism of this film has been that it essentially pits two colonialized people against one another. And people obviously don't like that. People obviously aren't too happy with that. And it made me think, and I've seen this take a few times, so I can't act like I'm the originator of this, but about how you typically don't see, you see violence from POC against POC, but you don't see violence from POC against colonial agents. So it's just not a thing that's done in Hollywood or in film and cinema. You don't see people who are American or Western representing the state or just doing their job, so CIA agents. You don't really see the effects, the violent effects of colonialism kind of wrought back on them. You see it in this film, though, at the beginning.
You see it in this film at the beginning, and beginning
yeah.
is the key part, because and we'll talk about this like later on, so let me not say too much, but we see it in the beginning, which I'm not gonna say I didn't love it. It was very, like, I was quite scared though, especially like knowing that like we only know 30% of what's underwater. We don't actually know what's going on down there. Right. I was expecting to see literally anything when those people went down in their little water suits or whatever. But child, I loved it. And I used to watch the show called Sirens. So it was nice reliving that childhood of mine.
I could imagine. Also, I want to shout out the score as well, because when that was playing in the background, I was locked in. Like I was locked in.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
But yeah, shout out to Riri, like you said.
I'm gonna say I didn't love the portrayal. I'm gonna put it out there. I didn't love the portrayal.
Yeah, I didn't. One of my favorite like scenes, like series of scenes in the film was when they were in America. I really did like the three of them. That's Shuri, our angel of death. What's her name again? I've forgotten her name. And Riri. Okoye, thank you.
Yeah, played by Danny Guerrero.
Exactly. When the three of them were in America and like, doing that whole bit there, that was I really enjoyed watching that. Like 3 black women on screen, like they were talking about Fenty 4 and 5, they were talking about Ashley Skin, and I said, yes, come on, I'm literally crying of laughter. But I feel like, and I get that Riri was like this juggernaut of like technical advancement and stuff. I just felt like it was a little bit lost on me. And it was so random to me. Like I felt like it would have been nice to get a bit more, to actually see her in action a bit more, just to really understand like how much of a prodigy she is. Because otherwise it's like, 1 minute she's like, oh, I need to take this laptop, I need to go, and the next thing she's in a suit, and I was like, right, okay. where,
Yeah.
why, when.
Yeah.
I just felt like that was a little bit random. But otherwise, like, I didn't hate her portrayal. Yeah.
I can see why you said it was random, because I mean, in the sense of, like, they're trying to do a lot in this film. They're trying to do a lot in this film without the film being all that complex. But anyway, we'll come back to that, because in the sense of, you know, you're trying to introduce the Talokan, your entire antagonist, you're building in this film, and building it in a way where you're like, okay, you lot can live on and make your own films and TV shows or whatever down the line. And then you're also introducing Riri Williams for the sole purpose of the fact that she has a TV show coming out down the line, which you'll flesh out more of her stuff then. So it's like, she's in this because she created this vibranium detector, which she wasn't even aware about being used by the CIA. And then now we understand her to be a genius. So then it's like, okay, the next beat for her is, I have this suit. And then I see you're like, what? This suit flies.
And also on that point about, like, her work being stolen to be used by the CIA, like, I feel like if that was me, I'd be livid, fuming. I'd be like, here we go again, stealing things that Black people have done. Like, I feel like in terms of complexity, that was maybe another angle that they could have gone down. And maybe it's okay because, like, we would have noticed it. But, like, since the film is essentially made for people, like, yes, it's made for us in mind, but ultimately the themes involved are there for, like, people who aren't Black to understand, right? And I feel like that was one point that, like, it just needed, like, one line to kind of tie together, instead of it just being like, oh, my work was used by the CIA. Darling. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It was.
I hear what you're saying.
And considering she was so, like, she was, like, venomous about the fact that this guy had used her basically and got an A star or whatever the grade was, right?
Yeah.
And she was like, Venmo me, da-da-da-da. And, like, you can see that she's, like, this badass chick, right?
Yeah.
Your work was plagiarized by the CIA. And you're talking about Ashley skin?
Your work, you are now the target of an assassination attempt by a nation of people because your work was taken from you and misused by another nation on your behalf.
I really don't feel like the gravitas of that, like, was dawned. I don't think she really felt that. And to be honest, I'm not gonna lie.
She's a child, like, she's 17, 18 in it. So
she was 19. She was 19.
Okay.
And I feel like that fact was also lost on Shuri in a way. Like, as in, like, I wasn't getting the fact that this was a monumental situation.
Yeah.
I wasn't feeling that these people were feeling that this is a really, really big deal. And maybe that shows in the fact that, like, you know, the Wakandans end up fighting the Talokans instead of fighting the CIA.
So on that note, let's jump to that. So this film, I mean, it tackles, you know, in terms of the big bad, is Talokan versus Wakanda. Wakanda gets drowned by Namor and Talokan because or Queen Ramonda in particular, but no, they as a people make the decision to protect Riri Williams. They don't want to hand her over to Talokan, which is what Namor was you know, demanding of them. Which and the reason I want to highlight that in particular, because it seems to me that's a continuation of Killmonger's legacy. It's Killmonger's politics, in the sense of getting Wakanda to stop thinking solely about Wakanda, to stop thinking solely in an isolationist lens, and think no, like, Black people are connected, and also so there's that lens, but also the sense of you can't just stand by when someone innocent is being targeted, and you know, I found that really, really interesting. It's a shame, obviously, that stance does lead to Queen Ramonda's death, which was, I didn't expect Queen Ramonda to die in this.
You think she needed to die?
She needed to die for pushing Shuri off the edge, because Shuri wasn't going to make the artificial the herb to make her the Black Panther. by that point, Shuri was knee deep in grief for her brother. Was not. It was almost in that kind of a place of stagnation where she wasn't really going anywhere. She's like, you know, I'm not gonna make this Black Panther thing come about again. I'm just gonna stay here. And her mom was gonna do all that kind of the queen stuff. But now Shuri was in charge, and I think being in charge way before she should have been kind of forced her to grow up like a lot. So it's. And we'll get into the war, and I mean we can actually talk about the war now. To be honest,
well, before we get to the war, sorry. So for the two times I saw this film, I still wasn't understanding why Ramonda had to die. Like, and people were saying what you said, you know, it needed to drive Shuri's character forward, blah blah. No. I really feel like with T'Challa's death at the start of the film, I didn't need to see anymore. I'm so sorry. Like, and I get that, like, we're in this shock factor of like entertainment these days, like given like Game of Thrones, like all of this stuff, like people like the shock factor of someone dying, that someone so important dying is sometimes what makes a really good show, right? In this instance, I didn't see Ramonda's death as necessary for Shuri's what's what I'm looking for?
Growth.
Shuri's growth. There we go.
What would have pushed her?
So what we'll get to that. What I will say though is that what I've learned in my thinking is that I understand Ramonda's death more in terms of what it did for Namor's character, in the sense of like we saw that Namor is about violence, as in like he does what he says on the tin. Okay, I don't mess around. Okay, I am a villain. I said, do you know what it is? I think we spent so much of the film understanding Namor that like we were kind of getting lost in it, and we were kind of like, oh yeah, well we can kind of see like where he's coming from. Like we can kind of see where he's coming from. Like, what a guy. But he needed to kill Ramonda basically in order for the audience to then be like, oh, this guy gotta go. You know what I mean? That's how I'm seeing Ramonda's death. I'm seeing it more as like a channeling for how we saw Namor as opposed to Shuri's like advancement. But maybe I'm just a hipster.
So, but then it needed to happen, is what I'm hearing from you. It did need to happen.
Yeah, and like I can accept now that it needed to happen, but like when I saw it the first two times, I was like, why have you done this? Why did you do this? Why? Yeah. But yeah, it's just one of those things. But like in terms of like how would Shuri have come to the conclusion that she needs to be the Black Panther? I don't have the answers. I don't have the answers. I just like Ramonda could have not died. Ramonda could have been in a coma. Like
that's weak.
No, I just feel like there was another, like there had to have been another way, and maybe we'll come back in a year's time and I would have the answer for you, right? But I just didn't like the fact that Ramonda had to die. I would love to see her in the third film.
So you're coming at it from the perspective of you like the character and wanted to see the character continue,
right? But then in saying that as well, in fact, you know what? We'll come to my next point. We'll come to my next point when we move on.
I do want to say another consequence of Ramonda's death, which is useful, which we won't see for now, but I'm curious to see where they take it, is for Riri's own characterization, because Ramonda died protecting Riri.
Saving her, yeah.
So I want to see what that does for her in her own show, if that kind of continues, because there are, I think, important consequences you can take from this. Like you said, for Namor's a really interesting point, which told us, he's about the action. But then at the same time, I think it also represents like a changing of the guard. So you now have, we've lost Tony, we've lost Captain America, the original Captain America. All these elder figures have now left, and it's now down to the next generation to take it forward. So Ramonda was great for representing stability, or being like, I'm still here, I'm continuing on. But now without that, then you kind of see, Wakanda's going to war. Wakanda's doing this thing, and I think that's interesting because it just kind of shakes things up a bit. So that's why I'm like, there is still, validity and value to be taken from. That's value, probably not the right word, but her
death did mean something, and I do get that. But I feel like also, I'm just gonna make the point I was gonna make before. I'm gonna make it now. When it's Wakanda versus Talokan, and like eventually Shuri manages to take Namor. They're on a desert somewhere, like on a beach somewhere, and she's about to poke this guy to death. And then she sees her mum in the ancestral plane, right? For me, that could have gone amiss. I'm so sorry, but like at the start of the film, we saw Ramonda talk about how you know, she could feel the presence of her brother, sorry, of T'Challa, and then what's her name? And then Shuri's like, that was a figment of your imagination, right?
Yeah.
I was like, how much more beautiful would this moment have been if Ramonda had come back? Like, do you know what I mean? And in like, not necessarily in the ancestral plane, but like if she had felt exactly what her mum had said she felt, right, when she was going through the grieving process of her brother. I was like, what a more beautiful moment than just like a flash of like, remind him of who you are in this other like, sorry. Because I remember
it was her from the
like,
ancestral plane.
Yeah, it was her from the ancestral plane, which I understood, but it, for me, did nothing.
I hear that.
For me, it was either you have this like beautiful montage of like you seeing the Talokan people, you seeing your own people, and seeing like, you know, why are we fighting? We shouldn't be fighting, kind of thing. It's either you had that, or you had her mother and her actually being able to have that conversation with her mother, which was lost when she had it with Killmonger. For me, it felt like in the editing they were like, oh, we should put her mum in there. Do you know what I mean? It felt like, oh, we'll just put like a little slideshow of her mum, and then like we'll just like bring it out. It didn't sit for me. In fact, it took me out of the film entirely, because it was just so random. And I get that flashes and memories and stuff are random, but like considering we never saw her mum in the ancestral plane, and now suddenly we're seeing her, I was like,
I disagree on that part. I do agree with your overall sentiment. I didn't love it. I think it made sense for her. You're not going to see her mum in the ancestral plane before that point. Like, you're just not. I mean, I guess the only time that could have happened was when she, you know, ate the herb or drank the herb, and then was, you know, saw Killmonger instead. Which actually, on a side note, I really love that. Didn't expect to see. I thought, you know, Michael B. Jordan could come back in some capacity, but to see him here and he's there in the throne, like, yo, it's me again. Yeah, I thought
he was
that was
giving
fantastic.
Star, which was like delicious. Like when he was circling her, like that was giving Lion King.
It was great.
In its
but that was the only other point which Angela Bassett, Queen Ramonda, could have shown up and been like, hey, but then it wouldn't have made sense because she was filled with so much rage and pain. Like, you had to see the rage and pain play out via like Killmonger and then not, you know, come back.
And I get all of that, but that is exactly my point, in the sense of like it was so random seeing her like in the ancestral plane for 5 seconds. Like, if we had seen her before in that space, it would make sense to then put it in as part of a montage, right? It was just like, and if you're gonna put her in as part of a montage, at least make it a bit longer. Like, make it a bit more of a moment. Let her like interact with her mother a little bit or something, just to make that moment like more powerful.
Sit better. Yeah.
It didn't really like. I saw the montage and I was like, okay, oh, and so because of that, now you're not gonna kill Namor. Okay, fine. Like, I was like, cool. But that's like, you know, the things that I'm picking up here are like quite small in terms of like the large scheme, like the grander story. But I just feel like that moment with her mom could have been like a perfect full circle moment where Shuri feels exactly what her mother was saying at the start of the film when they were sat on the beach together.
Yeah, I hear that. Jumping forward to the final sort of major story beat I want to touch upon was that the film's mid-credit scene, an extended mid-credit scene because you don't get a post-credit scene in this one, introduces one Prince T'Challa II, son of King T'Challa, which listen, we briefly mentioned, you know, the recast T'Challa movement. And I wondered, I said this early on, and I'll say this now, and I'm kind of glad to see they're doing this anyways. T'Challa should be recasted. Like, there's no, I don't understand really people, or I do understand it, but I don't agree with people who kind of go down the route of saying that, you know, if you recast T'Challa, you're disrespecting Chadwick Boseman's legacy. I think it's the exact opposite of that. Like, Chadwick has introduced his character to the zeitgeist for us in film version, which represents so much to Black people, to young Black boys, to people of color around the world, to just comic book fans, where he is an amazing superhero that you should see continued, and I think it's important to continue the legacy of Boseman and not to erase the legacy of Boseman. And I think with the introduction of how they've done this with the same name, in essence, it will be a recast down the line without them. But you're not having like, it's not Rhodey Rhodes or you have Terrence Howard and then
what's his name?
Oh,
Chidi something.
Don
Don
Cheadle.
Cheadle.
You have Don Cheadle. It's Cheadle. You're not having Don Cheadle just show up and then and then Tony is going, you look different. It's like, no, don't think about it. Don't ask about it. And then that's it. I think the way they're going about it is great because you continue the legacy where now this T'Challa II has to reflect on his father's impact on the world and the father he never got to know. And then all of this gets taken forward, and he still has the name T'Challa, and he will be the Black Panther in the future. I thought was great, fantastic stuff. So
do you think that because of that, then there'll be a time jump, or
not for now? I think they'll let it sit. I think the next Black Panther film, might continue with Shuri, and I don't think we'll get a time jump now unless there's a wider time jump in the MCU with the other stuff happening and the multiverse kind of collapsing and all that kind of stuff. Then we could see it. But I think I can see a place for him or Shuri because she's also really young with the young Avengers that they seem to be building. You have like Ant-Man's daughter who's coming into her own. You have Hawkeye. She didn't actually name herself in the end, but Hawkeye's sidekick coming into her own. You have Wanda's kids coming into their own. Riri Williams as well. You have the Black Captain America's young prodigy as well, which we saw in at the end of Falcon and Winter Soldier. So you have all these young superheroes coming into their own. So I think you'll either see Toussaint T'Challa in there, or you'll see Shuri in that role because she's also quite young. So, but I think down the line, T'Challa is definitely coming back.
That was crazy, and I think probably the most emotional part of the film for me. Like I didn't cry or nothing, but not that I'm a hard ass because I'm not. But it was shocking. I wasn't expecting it at all. And
the montage of Chadwick Boseman at the end as well, and the light kind of reflecting on Shuri's face, and she was going through it. She was burning the ceremonial robes, which her mom asked her to do at the beginning. So all came full circle. Great stuff. Cool.
Delicious. And also, we didn't talk about the opening title sequence when it was just all
silence. The minute silence.
Oh gosh, it was as a film celebrating the life of Chadwick and what he meant to the people, the cast members, the crew members, and just Marvel in general. I think was stunning. And it's interesting. I was listening to the Wakanda Forever podcast not too long ago, and Ryan Coogler was on it, and he was saying that he has so much to thank Chadwick for, not only because Chadwick was slightly older than Ryan, so he was not only giving him loads of wise words of wisdom or whatever, but also because of the decisions that that Chadwick had made from the Avengers 2, for example, when at that point they didn't even know that they were going to have a Black Panther film. They weren't sure if they were going to do it. But based on Chadwick's fight, basically in the writers' room, where he didn't explicitly say what the decisions were that Chadwick had a real part in enforcing. But he said that because of some of the decisions that he made in that room, that was what allowed for Black Panther, the movie, the film, to be made based on the decisions that he'd made. So I just thought that was just so beautiful. And R.I.P.
R.I.P. Do you want to talk about some production beats just to finish? What stood out to you in terms of your production and stats? Was it worth it? Yeah, I know. When you asked me that question, it's kind of redundant around this film, but yeah, financially speaking, was it worth it?
Financially speaking, well, according to the books, Kojo, so it grossed around $180 million during its opening weekend, and it's the third biggest opening for a film during the pandemic era. Okay, wow. The first being No Way Home, Spider-Man No Way Home, was 260 million. And the second being Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, which was 187 million, which I will say was all PR. Because they PR'd that film very well. So yeah, big opening weekend, and was also apparently the biggest opening weekend ever for a film released in the month of November. A little random fact for you. But were we expecting anything less? No, not really. Like when I went to cinema, it was fucking packed, like as it should. I had my tickets booked like a month in advance. Because I knew it was gonna be chocker. So stunning. And then it took about 9 months to film, and it only ended in like March, which is crazy when you think about like how much special effects they would have had to do, like all that underwater stuff. Like, and I will say, like, that underwater stuff, that's not easy to film. Like, it was so well lit for what it was, and like I thought it was good. I will say one thing though, this isn't really a production stat, but like it was just reminding me of something. You know, like when they're underwater and Namor's trying to take Shuri through, and he's like, oh, you have to get like this little jet stream or whatever to get
Finding Nemo.
Literally Finding Nemo. I was like, where the turtles at?
Yeah. I just needed somebody to shout out, yeah, surf's up, dude, or something.
You know what I mean?
was like, this is so much fun.
Seriously, I was like, see how Disney and Mom were just working together. Like I can't tell if that was on purpose, but like if it was, like, shout out to you guys, because I was just like, hey, where the turtles at? And all I was hearing was P-Show, 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney. That's all I was hearing.
I knew you'd say that.
That's what I was hearing. But yeah. Was it worth it? Absolutely. I mean, it was always going to be worth it, wasn't it?
Always going to be worth it.
I am so excited for the third film. I feel like we've had the ethnic on ethnic crime. Okay, we've seen the atrocities. Okay, we don't need any more.
Yeah.
Now we need to be fighting the colonizers. Thank you.
It's the CIA that's next, right? Because I mean, we didn't even touch upon that, and I think for good reason. It's probably the weakest part of this film, but the influence of the CIA. And Ross and I can't remember the director of the CIA, his ex-wife,
Val or something.
Yeah, Val. And wanting to destabilize Wakanda and everything else. I think we're going to see the CIA play a bigger role in being the villains, maybe in the next film. And then obviously the way this ends with Namor having let's say a fraudulent alliance, but it's a shady alliance from Namor's perspective, where he's waiting for Wakanda to be attacked, and then for Shuri and the rest of Wakanda to say, okay, you know what, we ally with Talokan, we're going to burn the whole world down. So I think you could see the CIA be the catalyst for some of those conversations to come about. But anyways, I agree.
What I will say, sorry, last little bit. What I will say though is, because I was having this conversation with my friends, and what I don't want, and I'm saying it now, Ryan. Okay, if you're listening, hun, what I don't want is, oh no, there's an alien. Oh, oops, bigger fish to fry. Can't get rid of the CIA now. Oh no, like, gotta deal with Thanos. Like, no. We're not doing that. We're gonna fight the CIA, okay? Because we need to defeat the colonizers. Thank you. We need it. You're asking
a lot of what is ultimately a Disney property, to be honest, but we'll see.
The Disney propaganda is real. Let's make a move. Come on.
Anyway,
inspire us, Disney.
We haven't got any time to really get into industry news, but we'll pick this up, in the next couple of weeks. Go and see Black Panther. It's pretty good, Phase 4 was a disappointment, so it was a really good, nice, I think, great note to end on. So looking forward to seeing what Phase 5 has in store for us. I believe this is the last film of the Marvel year for the calendar. Last Marvel film for the calendar. So yeah.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
And we have Secret Wars with Samuel Jackson in March coming out, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
All right.
It'll be interesting.
Queenie, as always, it's been a joy. Looking forward to also hearing some of the community's responses to this film, which we know we'll be putting out on Instagram and socials. Follow us, especially on YouTube. If you've got this far, you should be subscribing. But do check out our social media platforms as well. The Critics Pod. We'll be there.
Come on.
All right.
Thanks, Coach.
Take care.
Speak soon.
Bye.
Bye.